because this is a continuation of our classification 2. And just before we continue, because looked at last time, and then from there we shall proceed to the next kingdom, Kingdom Protoctista. So just a reminder of what we covered last time. We said kingdom bacteria, question 2, and last time we talked about kingdom Monera. Said this is a kingdom with the largest number of organisms, and a good example of these members, of course, bacteria. Under bacteria, we gave good examples of those that are responsible for cause of diseases such as cholera, which is caused by bacterium called another bacteria that causes a very common disease to human beings, which is referred to as, of course, the one that causes typhoid. Is just an example. We looked is just an example. We looked at the characteristics members of kingdom Monera, and we said one, they are very small, they are microscopic, and they can only be seen using a microscope, by the aid of a microscope. We also said they are prokaryotic, meaning two, because microscopic means they are unicellular, they are made up of one cell, they are very small. Then we had prokaryotic. That means that their cell lack a nuclear membrane. Of course, their cells have nuclear that is not bound by. They lack the nuclear, which is they lack the membrane that bounds the nuclear. That is a simple term. They are cells that have nuclear materials that are not bound inside a membrane. Number 3, we said some are autotrophic and others are heterotrophic. So that is a mode of nutrition, because some are autotrophic. That means that they make their own food, and others are heterotrophic. We also said that they lack membrane-bound organelles. Good example of this. Now, we also looked at the economic importance of these organisms. We said they cause diseases and so on and so forth. Today, we want to look at another kingdom called Protoctista or Protista. So we are looking at Protoctista. Now, Protoctista is the second kingdom, of course, with the second largest number of organisms. And this Protoctista is normally made up of protozoa. Good example here is the amoeba. And we have Plasmodium. Of course, all these two organisms are unicellular. Remember, they are not just the protozoa alone. We have the protozoa, and the second category of members of Protoctista, we have the algae. Now, under the algae, of course, we can have the Euglena. We have the Chlamydomonas. We have the Spirogyra. We have the Spirogyra. Now, all these three are multicellular. They are multicellular, all the three. Now, what have I said? I've said that we have two categories of members of this Protoctista. We have the protozoa, protozoan members, then we have the algae. Now, under the protozoa, of course, we are saying is made up of organisms such as the amoeba, which is microscopic and unicellular. Then we have the plasmodium, which is also microscopic and unicellular. Of course, when you look at the amoeba, is responsible for amoebic dysentery as a disease. And when you look at the plasmodium, of course, is responsible for cause of malaria. It is an organism that causes malaria, living organism. Now, another category here is the algae. Now, algae can also be referred to as, of course, they resemble plants. That is a simple term. All the algae, they resemble plants. That's why some of them will also have, you discover that some of them will even have a chloroplast. That means that they are green and they can make their own food. They can make their own food. So let us look at the euglena. No, let us look at a good example of the amoeba, of course. Look at the structure of the amoeba, and then we shall dive into the characteristics of these organisms. So look at the structure of the amoeba. That is a typical shape of amoeba. Of course, it has a nucleus at the center and also nuclear membrane. Now that majority of them are eukaryotic, we shall be talking about that. So there's a nucleus. Then, of course, we have the contractile vacuole here. Contractile vacuole. We have the cytoplasm. We have the pseudopodia. These projections, the ones that are projecting, we have those that are inside and outside. Of course, the projection, it is not uniform. The shape of the amoeba is curved, or rather it has some projection. These ones here, easy. These ones are just like the legs. We call them the false legs. So we call them the pseudopodia. Pseudopodia. So there are two. That's why we are saying they are pseudopodia. But if the line points on one, then we say is a pseudopodium. So pseudopodia when there are many, pseudopodium when it is one. Again, as we said, we normally have very basic organelles such as the mitochondria and so on and so forth. So we can have mitochondria here, mitochondrion. Because again, one, a mitochondrion. If there are many, we call them mitochondria. So this is a mitochondrion. We have mitochondrion. Any other part we can talk about? Cell membrane. Because this one is a cell membrane. Of these are just basic structures of any cell that you can come across. We have food vacuole, or somewhere here, food vacuole, and so on and so forth. Now, these are just basic structure of an amoeba, and amoeba is a good example of members of Protoctista. Of course, you also have this other structure of a Chlamydomonas. You have the structure of the Spirogyra. You need to look at them very carefully so that you are able to distinguish who is who. Now let us dive in and look at the characteristics of these members. General characteristics of members of Protoctista. So when you look at them, cause number one, we use the word some are unicellular, e.g. the amoeba. Not all are unicellular. Of course, we talked about others being multicellular, like for example, the members of algae. But now when you look at the protozoa, they are all unicellular. That's why we're using the word some are. Some are unicellular, while others are multicellular. A good example of the multicellular, we talk about the euglena. So whenever you're talking about unicellular or multicellular, we can bring up members are eukaryotic. Members are eukaryotic. Now, if you can understand, if you can still remember the meaning of prokaryotic, because you are able to even identify or rather. So we have many organelles in these members of Protoctista. Again, they have specialized pseudopodia or pseudopodium when it is one. So for amoeba, we have structure, pseudopodia, structures among the structures, I mean, pseudopodia, structures for locomotion. In Paramecium, the structure here is a cilia. Then euglena, locomotory structure for euglena is the flagella. When they are in plural and when it is in singular form, of course, we talk about flagellum. So these members have locomotory structures, and we've said for amoeba, the locomotory structure here is pseudopodium, responsible for movement. In Paramecium, in Paramecium, of course, the structure that is responsible for movement is a cilia or cilium if it is in singular form. Then in euglena, the locomotory structure here is a flagellum if it is one, and if it is more than one, of course, we have flagella. Now, assignment. Before we look at an assignment, maybe just a recap of what we've covered. We've said one, members of Protoctista are made up of protozoa, e.g. the amoeba and plasmodium, and also algae, which includes euglena, chlamydomonas, and spirogyra. Now, under protozoa, we've said that all these members are unicellular. They are made up of one cell. They are microscopic, all of them. Now, when you look at algae, we said this resembles plants. All of them resemble plants. And we have the euglena, chlamydomonas, and the spirogyra. And we said that all these members are multicellular, but their cells are undifferentiated. Therefore, we call these cells thalloids. Of course, some of the diseases that are caused by these protozoa, we talked about amoebic dysentery, and amoebic dysentery, of course, caused by amoeba, and also plasmodium causing malaria in living organisms. We went ahead and looked at the characteristics of members of Protoctista. One, we said some are unicellular and others are multicellular. Those that are multicellular, we say that they are made up of cells that are undifferentiated, meaning their cells are thalloid. Another characteristic we looked at was eukaryotic, meaning that their cells have nuclei that are not bound by a nuclear membrane, or they lack nuclear membrane bounding their cells, or rather they lack nuclear membrane. Of course, that is a simple term. Another thing is that they have many organelles, such as mitochondria and chloroplast in some. Those that are able to carry out photosynthesis will have They'll have a chloroplast, and those that are not able to make their own food, the heterotrophs, of course, they will tend to lack chloroplast. We looked at a general structure of an amoeba, and we said that it has, of course, structures such as the contractile vacuole. Of course, we looked at the function of contractile vacuole in Form 1 for storage of food, cytoplasm, the cell membrane, pseudopodia for movement, mitochondria, of course, for synthesis of energy, nuclear membrane, food vacuoles, and so on and so forth. Now, apart from that, of course, there are also some other characteristics. We say they have specialized structures such as the contractile vacuole for thermoregulation, locomotory structures, e.g. in amoeba, we talked about pseudopodia. In paramecium, we talked about cilia as a locomotory structure. Then in euglena, we looked at the flagella or flagellum as also a locomotory structure. Now, today's assignment is explain the term eukaryotic. Explain the meaning of the term eukaryotic. Explain the meaning of the term eukaryotic. Number 2, give one structure used for movement by amoeba. Give one structure used for movement by amoeba. Number 3, what is the role of a contractile vacuole? What is the role of a contractile vacuole? And then finally, define the term thalloid. Define the term thalloid. Thank you so much for your time, and have